Hello, my name is Deanna Singh.
And I'm Justin Ponder.
We are so glad to have another episode here of Uplifting Conversations, especially because we are already, Justin, can you believe this? We are already past the halfway mark of January.
Exciting, very exciting stuff.
I don't know. I feel like this month is going by too fast. I'm still in 2024 to some degree.
You know what? This is going to be the best 2025 I've ever had.
Me too. Me too.
Looking
I
forward
really
to it.
love the way that you just said that because it's a perfect way to segment into what we are talking about today. Like we are talking about this idea of what does it mean to have really positive language? Like how do we speak life? Like what does that look like? How do we practice it? Why is it important? And just what you just said, right? You took my I don't know that tone, right? That I don't know
You flip
2024.
it.
You flipped it. You flipped it. You flipped it into the positive, right? Like, yeah, this is going to be the best 2025 I've ever had.
I
And
like the way that you mentioned flip it into the positive, because a lot of interesting things are done in the area of positive psychology. You know, philosophers for thousands of years and all kinds of theologians and other people have examined the idea of happiness and joy. And a lot of folks in positive psychology and behavioral psychologists, happiness is not just a state of being, it's a cognitive habit. It's I always take things and I find ways to flip it. It's not being in denial. It is not repressing hurtful or negative things, but it's always being able to find, to flip it into something that is productive, something that is goal oriented. And it is difficult. It is hard, but can become a habit. So I like that. Flipping it.
flipping it and making a habit out of practicing it,
Yeah.
right? Like that it is a skill, that
Mhm.
it's something that you can practice at, it's something that you can get better at, it's a technique. It's not just something that happens. It's intentional, right? I think those are all important things. So, people might be wondering like what we're even talking about when we're talking about this idea of speaking life. So maybe we could start there. Justin, what does it mean to you when we say speak life, like you're speaking life?
I think there's a few characteristics of it. I don't have like a fully formed definition for it, but I
Yes,
know one of the
I know you do. Let me see. Let's sit back, friends, and see if Justin has a fully formed definition or not.
well, I know some of the characteristics are not just they're the positive, but I don't want to. I'm kind of cautious about positive and optimistic because sometimes they can come with value judgments. I am
Mhm.
positive while you're being negative.
Mm.
I acknowledge and honor the value of what we might call negative emotions, of sadness, of despair, of fear and anxiety. And it's not to say that those are bad and they are not part of who humans are and part of the whole human experience. But it is an intentional investment on even while we're feeling despair, even while we're feeling anxiety, even while we're facing grave, terrible situations. It is the invested practice on also finding the coexisting happiness, joy, hope that also always exists with those bad things that we would not like. So part of it is the optimism of intentionally practicing to find the hope that is always also there among the darkest and most desperate times. I think it's focused on the future. It is focused on solutions. It is making comfort with the fact that, like we mentioned, it's a habit. It's not simply waiting for happiness to come to me. It is, I will actively seek out and find it.
Mm.
I think also it is important to tie it to not just self esteem and self care, it is also the essential ingredient to communal care.
Yep.
So, speaking life is not just I help myself feel better about stuff or I help myself endure things. It is I speak life and find joy in the most difficult parts of my life so I can give that joy and inspiration to others. So I think that's another key component is speaking life to self, but also so that I can go out and inspire others also. So Deanna, what about you? What are some things that you think about when we use this phrase speaking life?
I think one of the things that I try to pay a lot of attention to is just what are the words that we're using to describe ourselves and to describe others, to describe what's happening, right? The person who controls the story, like
Mhm.
controls the narrative, that's the person in the room that has the power. And so I think that when you are that person, you're telling your own story, or you're telling somebody else's story, or you're telling a story of something that's to come or something that has happened, you have a lot of power in how you determine where you're going to put emphasis, what characters are going to be the main characters, what's the tone going to be, and what's going to be impacted. And so when I think about speaking life, it's that a lot of it is that internal voice. But some of it is that external voice too, and paying attention to not just the words that we use, but the tone in which we say things, and also the context that we build around them.
Mhm.
So I will say to you, that there's a lot of examples that I have of this, right? But one of the things that I think over time that I've just been able to get better at, and this is not something that I was good at all, and still something that I'm 100% growing in, is listening to the ways that people talk about their own impact, right? Or people
Mm.
talk about where they can show up. And so when everything, their locus of control, everything is outside of them, right? Like, well, if they did that, if this was like this, if blah, 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 then right away, I start to try and like discern, okay, well, if everything is out there, then even as you're telling the story, you have eliminated yourself as a character. And so
Mhm.
that's one thing that I actually watch for, right? Because you aren't giving yourself any kind of authority or power. And if you can't see yourself in the story, you won't be in the story. And so I think that's one thing that I've just noticed, right? Is something that I'm better at discerning. Another thing that I think is really impactful is that when you think about it, right, every idea, like this pen, right, this, I don't know, I'm trying to look, this lotion, like all these different things that the camera, all these different things that exist, at one point, they were nothing but an idea.
Mhm.
And for them to come to fruition, they needed somebody to express, right? Like, this is the vision. This is what I'm thinking about. And so they had to get over the discomfort of not knowing everything, right? Get over the discomfort of ambiguity, get over the discomfort of being potentially very, very wrong, and get to a place where they could say, this is what I'm dreaming about, or this is what I'm thinking about, or this is what I think. And so that's the other component that I
Yeah.
really have come to value is somebody who speaks life can talk about not just what is here right
Mhm.
now, but they're also somebody who can see the world for not what it is, but what it could be. And I think that's really powerful too.
And I think it's like inspiring the self and inspiring others because every great thing, whether it's the pen, the lotion, the camera, there's obstacles
Oh, yeah.
because it's kind of the default of the individual human mind, but also the group to be like, no, we can't change anything. It
Mhm.
doesn't get any better than this. And
Yeah.
I think oftentimes when we think about speaking life or joy, those often seem as nice to haves as opposed to essentials to making change.
Yeah.
So my focus is often in Black studies and African American history, for example. So we like to think about the civil rights movement as being a response to injustice. But behind the scenes, the things that don't, for every march on Pettus Bridge where people are getting abused, getting fire hoses, dogs, and batons hitting them, what doesn't make the cameras is the relentless hours of spending time with friends over meals, singing songs, linking arms that encourage you. Here come the dogs, the fire hoses, the batons.
Yep.
Your joy reminds you this is worth doing. When you hit the tough times of discouragement or disillusionment, you have to have already invested. My mind is made up and resolved. This is especially important, which I think I'll segue. I'd love to hear your ideas, Deanna, about why this. All the things are why this. I think it's especially important in 2025 because we spend more time, our minds occupied with social media. And social
Completely.
media algorithms across the board prioritize and favor these posts, the content, and even the wording in the headlines that promote outrage, anger, frustration, humiliation, shame, conflict. Watch this person
Or
get
fear,
humiliated. What's that?
or fear.
Yep, and fear. All
Mhm.
those things encourage passivity and despair and anxiety. The world is terrible. If you were a scientist watching nothing but social media, you'd be like, folks are really mean, nasty, scared, and I don't know why anybody does anything. So more than ever before, and it is not because humans have gotten worse. It's because the content that makes its way to you has been elevated because it's been watched by watch X completely humiliate Y or watch terrible situation unfold. So in this landscape, more than ever before, perhaps, we have to really speak life to our minds and say, despite the algorithm that's prioritizing fear, death, destruction, fear, conflict, and pessimism, I will actively, proactively feed myself plenty of healthy, nutritious things. And before I go to you about like why do this, I just want to be clear. I'm talking very passionately about these, not because I've got it. I am talking to myself through you all, but like, come on, Justin, be better, do better. So I am not there. I am a
Yeah.
fellow traveler.
I think that's important to note, though, right? Is that if it is something that we're practicing, like it isn't something that's perfect all of the time, but after you start to get more comfortable with it, you create those patterns in your brain and you have some go-to things that you can do and you kind of build up your techniques, then it is more possible for you to go. But it doesn't mean it goes away. It just means you're able to temper it more. And I do think that's important to note. But this whole idea of speaking life, I think, is really important. And why now? I do think that there is this sense of fatigue.
Mhm.
I think there's this sense of like resignment almost of like things are just happening to me or happening around me. And it might be a little bit of empathy overload. I don't know if that's a real term. Justin will tell
Yeah,
us, but
there's empathy fatigue. Yeah.
empathy
Mhm.
fatigue, right? But like this idea that like there's so many things happening and I feel so many things, I'm not sure what to do with all of that. And so there can be this like, I don't know, heaviness. And so one of the ways to like work through that heaviness is to be able to understand this language component and speaking life. And I see this all the time. Whenever, we get into situations that are sticky, right? So we have a client, we have a family member, we have somebody who's really just in a sticky situation. The moment where things start to move in a direction that is closer to a solution or resolution or clarity, a lot of those moments are actually defined when a person decides that what they're going to do is speak life into the situation. And I see that happening over and over again. And so I think part of the reason why it was important to me, like when we were thinking about what topic we wanted to cover, was that we're in a moment where there's that fatigue and there's that heaviness, but we're also, it's still very true that when you are able to see not that you're in it, like we have to go through it. That's part of life. You go through it. But when you're able to speak, not just of what's happening right now, but when you're able to speak about what you see in the future or what you're aiming towards, you're going to be more focused on that. And it's going to actually get you back on track faster.
Yeah.
So, Justin, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so how do we do this thing? We did the what it is, why do it. Now it's the how. So, Deanna,
Yeah.
you convinced me. So, how in the world do I do this thing? What are some
Um,
tips?
well, I don't want to take your thunder, okay? Because this is definitely a Justin Ponderism. But I think one of my very, very favorite terms that Justin will say is like, let's goss up. Like, not gossip, goss up. Meaning, like, let's talk positively about other people when they are not even in the room. And I think this is one of the things that as your wife, as your partner in life and in business, as co-parenting with you, like just in all these different facets that you and I operate in, this is one of the things that I love the most about what one of the things I love that we do together, right? So if you have anybody's like ever like, oh, Deanna and Justin, we're talking about you, I don't want you to get mad because more than likely we were gossiping you, right? And what that looks like is, you know what? I saw such and such yesterday, and she is just really doing it. I mean, she had all kinds of things that were really in her way, and she was able to handle them with so much grace. And I really look up to her for these reasons, right? Or, oh, you know what? Um, he bumped into me in the store, and you should have seen that sweater, Justin. It was a sweater like the one you got on right now. Like it was just banging. Like it was so cool. Or right, like that's what we do. That's what we
Yeah.
like to do, and in many different ways. And I think that that practice of gossiping people also helps just with your own self, because as humans, right? I mean, think back, especially to middle school. You think that anytime anybody's talking about you is bad. But if you are in the habit and you actually behave in a way that is different from that, it also can break some of those mind melds in your head that make you think that every time someone's speaking about you, it's bad.
I love that. So a few things. One, like we pun off of gossip, but I do not judge gossip. It can be
Mm.
harmful to people, but across as far as recorded history, in every human group, gossiping plays an enormously important social function, ethical function, teaching function, and even psychological function. So it's not stop gossiping, it's change what you're gossiping about.
Yeah.
Because whether it's I'm talking about the movie we just watched, or the book we all just read at the book club, or the painting we're looking at together at the gallery, or the news story that just happened, or the person who just left the room. Throughout all these things, humans want to understand, to interpret, to share interpretations, and think about some of the best social connections you've made have been around gossiping, about interpreting a story of someone who's not there. Where
Mhm.
it gets harmful is when we get in the practice of the only way I know how to connect with person A, the only way I know how to connect with Deanna is when I'm talking about the person who just left the room. There will be something like, let you have a really good friend. You all go to a party together. Think about the car ride after the party. The first thing you will be compelled to do is to talk about folks who are at the party. So rather than repressing, I won't talk about people behind their back, talk up about them. Gain the benefits of Deanna and I bond by talking about people who are not here, but rather than gossiping negatively and harmfully in ways that can be lying and deceitful to them, I gossip them. But also think about, I love the way that you phrase it, Deanna. It can be harmful to the gossiper if the only way I'm connecting with Deanna is we're talking the worst about people around us. Because what I start to do is, well, I assume that what everybody else is doing. I assume everybody. I said this to my dad this morning. I said, "Oh, I got to." One of my New Year's resolutions is working on getting over my greed for opinions. Because I said,
Mhm.
what it does is it makes me assume that everybody's as mean and judgmental as I am. I worry everybody's as bad as I am. But if you
Mhm.
practice it, gossiping others, your brain starts to change. Oh my
Right.
goodness, other people might be saying good stuff about me too.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I think that when you do that, when you have that feeling, Justin, I'm going to put our business out here on the streets. I mean,
Good.
I
These are
know
all friends. We share generously.
but one of our favorite games to play is a game called Carry On. And
Yes, tell it.
okay, so we play
Well,
this
let's
game.
tell about how it started because the process.
Yeah, well, you tell how it started because
So
I don't
it
know.
started. Justin's on a journey. I'm with you out there trying to figure it out. We would see people doing things that were extraordinary and maybe questionable. And it started as quit playing. Like, see somebody do something, like, quit playing. And I would say, Deanna would never participate in these things because she's a
You
great.
know what? Don't say that. I did. I definitely saw some quit playing moments.
And this was a long time ago. This was like maybe 8 years ago. And we just like, quit playing. And we would assign a points to it. Quit playing, 50,000 points.
Yeah.
But Deanna had this moment like, why do we do this? I was like, because it's fun. I said, but what are we starting to do? We're starting to practice looking for quit playing behavior in other people. And she said, what about if we flipped it? And you said, flip it to,
Yeah. I said, carry on. Flip it to
not
carry
quit
on.
playing, to carry on.
Right. And it's so fun. It's so fun because we'll be like traveling or we'll just be in the store. Or we'll be like, whatever. Imagine any scenario coming into a movie theater and we'll just see someone and like their aura and like what they are doing. And, we don't have to speak to the person. I'll be like, carry on, like
Mhm.
carry on. And it's cool. It's just a nice shorthand way of us being able to acknowledge the beauty and the humanity that we see in other people around us. And it's so fun. It's like such a fun, it's just such a fun shorthand for us. So again, if you ever hear us and we're next to you and we're like, carry on, you just know. Okay. That's Justin and I shorthand saying, you are rocking it. And we see you.
In addition to like finding the positive in others and training our mind and our relational pattern and conversation to find positive in others, I like also something else that we do quite often is we challenge ourselves to use the positive form. So this
Mhm.
isn't positive, just everything's happy and everything's sunshiny in deceptive ways. It's a grammatical thing. So the negative form is not stuff that's dark and gloomy. The negative form is when I talk in negation. So think about all the contractions that end in apostrophe T. Wouldn't, couldn't, shouldn't. All the unts. I didn't, I won't, all the unts. But also think about the nevers, that I will never do this, or this never happened, or no one did these things. And trying really hard to flip them into the positive of what is and what does exist. So we talk about this if you've been with us a lot. It's great for your New Year's resolutions and for
Mhm.
behavior change. Because think about if you say, I won't X, not only that gets your mind to focus on the negative behavior you don't want to do, it increases the likelihood you're going to do it. As
Yep.
opposed to for every unt, for every negative form, there's a positive flip to it. So think about the most traditional New Year's resolutions. I'm going to lose weight. It's technically a negative form because you're talking about what you're going to lose as opposed to what you're going to gain. I will positively seek after healthier lifestyles. And these are the stats I'm looking for. I won't eat cake. Then you know what you do? All you give your brain to do is sit around, don't eat cake, don't eat cake, don't eat cake. You know what it's going to do? It's going to eat some cake, as opposed to I will eat more something else. So
Mhm.
when we talk about using the positive form, it's flipping the negative you don't want and substituting it, as opposed to suppressing it, substituting it with the positive thing you do want. It is time and again one of the tricks that helps us live healthier lives and achieve our goals more.
I think another one that's really hard for me, really, really, really hard for me, because I don't know why. I don't know if I just like my upbringing or like experiences that I've had, or I don't know. But one of the things that I will do often is I will apologize. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Mm.
I'm sorry this. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
And I started to hear our children do it for things that they have no business apologizing for because they've not done any harm to anybody, and the apology didn't make sense. And so sometimes that's like one of those cues to you when you're like, wait, where'd you get that from? Like what? And oh, whoops, you got it from me. And so one of the things that we've been practicing, not just me, but also the kids, like kind of consistently, is the idea of how do you replace apologies with gratitude?
Mm.
So instead of saying like, I'm sorry that I'm a few minutes late, you could say, thank you so much for your patience. Instead of saying, I'm sorry, I don't know, Justin, give me another one. Like,
I'm sorry, I can't think of an example.
yeah, I'm sorry, I can't think of an example. Instead of saying that, you could say, thank you so much for asking me the question. If I have a few more minutes, I'm sure I could come up with a great idea.
Mhm.
Right? Same message. It is true to what you were trying to say, and really holding the apologies for times where it's appropriate. That in and of itself is one of those things. Like if you're apologizing, people are hearing like, oh, wait, I should be maybe disappointed in you, or I should be angry with you, or I should be, that's the message that you're sending out when they might not be. And vice versa. If you are always saying it, then you start to feel like, oh, I am messing up all the time. I
Yep.
am, doing, and
And you're
so,
framing yourself in their mind, I'm a mess up.
yeah.
And
And
also,
so,
if they're giving you something for every situation where you would want to apologize, there is a gift already there.
yeah.
There's already like, oh, if you are late to the virtual meeting and you click on and the person is still there, they are giving you the gift already of patience. And as
Mhm.
opposed to having gratitude to acknowledge them and their gift to make it all about your guilt is not healthy for you and you miss an opportunity to goss up to someone's face, like to them, like, you're an awesome person. You're patient. You waited for me.
Mhm.
And rather than making it all about you and your faults, you get to make it more, you give the gift to people who are giving to you. You are awesome for being patient. And it's also a really great way to diffuse folks you have conflict with, as also is like, no, I will compliment you. I will interpolate you as a patient, kind, giving person, rather than making it about the conflict in which I see myself in a negative light. So, yeah.
And another real talk situation,
Yes.
I have found that like oftentimes in really tense situations. So, we will have moments where people will say, like, hey, I just want you to know everybody in that room that you're about to go speak to, who, by the way, you've never met before, have no relationship with, are already mad at you. They don't want to be here, or they're angry, or they don't, whatever. Right. And so we can end up in some kind of hostile situation, not kind of, actually very hostile situations. And one of the things that I have learned is that if you go in not
Mhm.
focusing on the hostility, you'll go in and everything you say, everything that comes out of your mouth will be very defensive. Everything will be like really like attacky. That's
Yep.
not the word, but like, like really aggressive. And even
Mhm.
if that's not your heart, even if that's not your intention. But if you go in with a sense of gratitude, if you go in with a sense of, I'm going to find, like, I'm going to catch you being amazing. And
Yep.
that's what you actually do, that
Mhm.
you kind of like take the heat out of the room. So one of the things that I do is I will fit with intention. I'll be like, okay, that's a hostile room. Okay, let me find the person who has on the brightest color. And I'm going to go and compliment them for having the brightest color. I haven't even walked into the room yet, but I love bright colors. And I love when people wear bright colors. And so I know that's something that I already appreciate. I'm staying authentic to myself, but I'm also, in a way, like giving my brain something different to focus on. So it's not focusing on the hostility, it's focusing on who's got that. And then when I walk in, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I am genuinely excited.
Yep.
That is an
Rather than
amazing
waiting around. Yep.
pink jacket that you have on. Like, where did you get that jacket? Right. And now I've engaged in a conversation with you, and you might have come in thinking that you were going to be met with hostility, the other person, but you haven't been. You've been met with a compliment. Are you kidding me? That
Mhm.
completely changes the dynamic of what is about to happen in that room. So I get to stay authentic. I get to retrain my brain on what it is that I want to focus on, and not on the thing that's going to deter me from my actual objective. And I give people the opportunity in the room to engage with me in a way that allows for them to put some of their guards down too.
And I love this, like, kind of relational with maybe things that are framed as oppositional, because something I have a hard time with, and nope, let me flip it. Something I'm working on and excited about
Look at you.
is replacing hierarchical language and comparisons with parallels. So, Deanna knows this. I often will say, uh, the most, or like words that end in est, the ist, the highest, the darkest, the strongest, the heaviest. And I don't know why I do it, but I like jump to the ist, or comparisons. Like when I use words that end in er, that is lighter, that is sooner, that is nearer. And I try to slow myself down enough to think, rather, because the problem with hierarchies is it imagines there's one line of criteria and there's different things that rank. There are some that are X, there are some that are Xer, and then there are some that are the Xist. But when you think about life and the way that it's really lived, and we think about speaking life, it is always the new potential for things. It is always growing, it is always changing, it's always adapting. So rather than there's one line with ers and ists, there are parallel lines. So I'm
Mhm.
trying to slow down more to replace comparisons with parallels. So rather than saying, this shirt is more yellow than that shirt, trying to get in the specifics of what the thing is that exists on its own independently, not in comparison. This is canary yellow. That is ochre. They exist in two parallel lines. It is not that this one, there's one standard of yellow, and this one is more yellow than that one. It's nope. This is canary yellow, and that is ochre. They are different, they are parallel, and they are both awesome.
So just in case somebody was wondering, okra, that's a version of.
Ochre, Ochre. It's like a very dark yellow. It's like brownish
Mm,
yellow almost.
I thought you said okra, and I'm like, that's green, Justin.
No. Oh, I'm hungry now. Okra.
Well, I know this. Hopefully, others have like been able to appreciate this. I'm going to end with one really amazing thing that Justin does for me, and it's like something that I think has made this whole process of being able to speak life something that's a real thing and something I think about on a daily basis. Is he will help me get back on track by saying something really simple. Like if he hears me say something that's like disparaging or something that's particularly like about myself or about like whatever, he will say, please speak nicer to my wife.
Hmm.
And clearly, you know, he's talking about me. He's talking about me in the third person, which obviously is a little weird, Justin. But it's kind because it's a kind way to hold me accountable to this idea of like speaking life, right? And he's showing his care and his concern. And so I guess the other thing I would say, this isn't necessarily a technique that it's a technique that you could apply, but it's a technique that you could also ask for. Like, hey, you know, with people that you love or people that care about you, when you hear me doing this, one thing that would be really helpful is if you could remind me to speak nicely to myself, right? One thing that you could do is just remind me that like that you care and that you hear me saying things that aren't necessarily based in fact, but might be based in just this moment and this reality that's swirling around me. So
And
that's kind
another thing that we do is we answer a compliment with a compliment. So, one last thing, the thing that that Deanna has taught me is notice that story. Like I'll reply in response to something that's happening. Deanna has challenged me, and I would extend the challenge to all of you: is to act. Even the scenario you gave about I'm going into a room, it's been framed as conflict oriented and hostile. I will proactively go in there. I'm not going to wait around to see how people are going to be. I will go in with a big old smile and I will compliment somebody. And I've always been like cautious about that. Like, you've taught me to proactively compliment strangers. And you talk a lot about your big mama saying, like, you have to actively say something nice to people. Don't, I'm polite and I am kind. My middle name is Curtis, which means courteous. My name is Justin, which means just. I am just, I am courteous. My last name's Ponder, I think. The problem with that is you've nudged me and encouraged me to, yeah, be more than just, be more than courteous and polite, be more than thinking. Go out and actively say a compliment to someone, because your big mom said you might not know, you might be the only person who gives them a compliment that day. So I'm not passing strangers. You've taught me to pass strangers and compliment them for no reason other than they are a living human being, part of this life community, and they are awesome, and I might never see them again, and they might never get another compliment again. What an awesome opportunity we have to speak life even to strangers. So thank you, Deanna, for challenging us to get outside of our comfort zone and talk to strangers and give them compliments.
yeah. Well, thank you. Um, Well, that brings us to our time. So, Justin, thanks again. I know it always goes so fast, but
It's not
thank
the
you
end
so
of our
much.
time. It's till next time.
Till next time.
Flip it, flip it.
Now everybody we meet on the street's gonna be like, "Wait, how do I take this and flip it?"
No, they'll
We're
just give us the signal. They'll just give us the signal to flip it.
yeah, flip it.
Or this one, the flip it.
Yeah, that's another one. Justin does that often. Like, let's just take it. But thank you so much, everyone who was able to join us. Of those of you who are watching the recording, we really appreciate it. What we have come to understand is that when we are able to engage in conversations like this with one another, with you all, it really does allow for all of us to be better if we are truly going to have a communities where we see what doesn't exist already, then we have to practice these things together. So incredibly grateful for all of your time and really looking forward to the next time we get to have a conversation. Until then, bye.